Tonight, you are not here to learn power. You are here to quietly observe it. Because the truth is, power rarely announces itself. It doesn't shout, it doesn't argue, it doesn't try to prove anything. It simply exists. And those who understand it move differently in this world. So as you lie down, maybe with your eyes slowly closing, just listen. No need to remember everything. No need to take notes. Let the ideas pass through you, because sometimes the things we understand best are the ones we don't try too hard to hold. There was once a young man who believed that talent alone would take him far. He worked harder than everyone. He spoke more confidently. He made sure people noticed him. And for a while, it worked. People admired him. They praised his intelligence. They even envied his discipline. But slowly, something began to change. The same people who once supported him started pulling away. Their smiles became thinner. Their words became shorter. And one day, he realized something strange. The more he tried to shine, the more uncomfortable others became.
It confused him. After all, wasn't success supposed to be visible? Wasn't excellence supposed to stand out? But what he didn't understand was something far more subtle, something most people never notice until it's too late. In a quiet room, far away from applause and attention, an older man once told him, "Never make those above you feel small." The young man laughed at first. It sounded like insecurity, like weakness, but the older man simply smiled and said nothing more. Days passed, then weeks, and slowly the young man began to see it. A boss who stopped giving him opportunities, a mentor who grew distant, a colleague who quietly turned others against him, not because he failed, but because he succeeded too loudly. Power, he realized, is not just about rising, it is about how others feel while you rise. And so, he began to change. He still worked hard, but now he listened more. He still had ideas, but now he presented them carefully. He still shined, but he learned to let others shine first.
And something unexpected happened. Doors began to open again. People trusted him more. They included him. They supported him. Not because he became weaker, but because he became aware. Awareness, that quiet skill that separates those who struggle for power from those who simply hold it. As you rest tonight, think about this gently. How often do we try to prove ourselves? How often do we speak just a little too much? And what would happen if instead we moved just slightly more carefully? Not with fear, but with understanding. Because the world is not always watching what you do. Sometimes it's watching how you make others feel. And in that invisible space, power quietly grows. In another time, in another place, there lived a man who never spoke first in a meeting. People underestimated him. They assumed he lacked ideas. They assumed he lacked confidence. And he let them think that. Because while others spoke, he observed. He noticed who interrupted, who agreed too quickly, who sought approval, and who silently controlled the room. And when he finally spoke, it was never long, just a sentence, sometimes only a question. But somehow, the entire direction of the conversation would change. Not because he forced it, but because he understood something simple. Words gain power when they are rare. And perhaps that is something worth remembering.
even beyond tonight. There is something strange about silence. Most people are uncomfortable with it. They rush to fill it. They speak before they think. But those who understand power learn to sit inside silence as if it were a quiet advantage. Because in silence, people reveal themselves, not through what they say, but through what they cannot avoid saying. There was once a woman who rarely argued, not because she had nothing to say, but because she understood that arguments are often not about truth. They are about ego, and ego is loud. So when others raised their voices, trying to prove themselves right, she would simply listen. At first, people thought she had lost, but over time, something unexpected happened. Those same people began to seek her approval because deep down, they were unsure of themselves, and her silence felt like judgment. Not harsh, not aggressive, just present. And that presence carried more weight than any argument ever could.
Sometimes, the strongest position is not to react at all, because reactions can be predicted, but calm is difficult to read, and what cannot be easily read cannot be easily controlled. Now, imagine this. You walk into a room and everyone is trying to be seen. They speak louder, they laugh harder, they try just a little too much. And then there is one person who does none of that. They sit calmly, they observe, they speak only when necessary. And without understanding why, people begin to notice them more, not because they demanded attention, but because they did not need it. And that is a quiet form of power. The less you chase attention, the more it seems to find you. The less you try to impress, the more intriguing you become. It is almost as if the world respects what it cannot fully understand.
But this balance is delicate, because silence can also be misunderstood. Stay silent too long and people may forget you. Speak too much and they may resist you. So the question becomes, when do you speak and when do you remain still? There was once a young advisor in a royal court. He was intelligent, but more importantly, he was patient. While others rushed to offer solutions, he would wait, sometimes for hours, sometimes for days. And when he finally spoke, his words felt inevitable, as if they had always been the right answer, not because he was smarter than everyone, but because he understood timing. Timing is often more powerful than knowledge itself. Say the right thing at the wrong time, and it is ignored. Say a simple thing at the perfect moment, and it becomes unforgettable. So tonight, as your mind begins to slow, consider this gently. How many times have we spoken just to be heard? And how many times would silence have served us better? Because power is not only in what you do, it is in what you choose not to do. There is another truth that reveals itself slowly. People do not always remember what you say, but they remember how you made them feel about themselves. Make someone feel small, and they may smile, but they will not forget. Make someone feel important, and they may support you in ways you never expected. So those who understand power learn a quiet habit. They observe before they act. They listen before they speak.
and they think before they reveal. Because once something is said, it cannot be taken back. But when something is held back, it becomes a choice. And in that choice, there is control. And perhaps control is not about controlling others, but about controlling yourself, your reactions, your words, your timing, because the one who controls themselves rarely needs to control anyone else. As the night grows quieter and your thoughts begin to drift, there is one more idea to let settle gently. Not everything needs to be revealed. Not every plan needs to be shared. Not every thought needs to be spoken. Because mystery has a quiet strength, and those who reveal everything leave nothing for others to wonder about. But those who reveal just enough create curiosity, and curiosity is a subtle form of influence. So perhaps the goal is not to be fully understood, but to be just slightly unpredictable. As the night settles in and your thoughts begin to soften, there is something else that quietly shapes power: reputation. Not what you believe about yourself, but what others come to believe about you. And once formed, it begins to speak, even when you are silent. There was once a man who was known for always keeping his word. He did not speak often, he did not make promises lightly, but when he did, people listened. Because over time, his actions had built something invisible, yet incredibly strong: trust. And that trust became his power. He no longer needed to convince anyone. He no longer needed to explain himself, because his reputation arrived before him. But reputation is fragile. It takes time to build and only a moment to break. One careless action, one unnecessary word, and the image begins to shift. So those who understand this protect their reputation quietly, consistently, without drawing attention to it. Now imagine something different: a person who is unpredictable, one day kind, another day distant, one moment supportive, the next cold. People around them begin to feel uncertain, and uncertainty creates distance, because people are drawn to what feels stable. So power is not only in mystery, but also in consistency. Be calm consistently, be thoughtful consistently, be controlled consistently, and over time, people will begin to trust what they can rely on. But there is a deeper layer, something even more subtle: perception. Because reality is not always what people respond to, it is what they believe to be real. There was once an artist who was not the most skilled, but he understood how people see. He presented his work with confidence. He framed it as valuable. He spoke about it as if it mattered. And slowly, others began to believe it too, not because it changed, but because its perception did. This is not deception, it is awareness. The awareness that how something is presented can shape how it is received. So as you move through life, remember this quietly: people do not always see what is there. They see what they expect to see. And sometimes what you choose to show becomes more powerful than what you actually are. But power is not only external. It is not only in rooms, in conversations, in other people. It is also internal. Because the greatest struggle is not with others,
It is within yourself, your impulses, your reactions, your need to prove, to explain, to respond. And when you begin to master that, something changes. You no longer feel the need to win every argument. You no longer feel the need to be seen all the time. You become calm. And in that calmness, there is strength, a quiet strength that does not need validation. As your mind continues to drift, there is one final idea to let settle gently. Power is not about control, not really, because control is temporary. It requires effort, it creates resistance. But influence is different. Influence flows. It does not force, it does not demand, it simply guides. And those who understand this do not try to dominate the world. They move within it, carefully, quietly, intentionally. So tonight, as you rest, you don't need to become someone else. You don't need to chase power. Just begin to notice. Notice how people speak. Notice how they react. Notice what is said and what is not. And most importantly, notice yourself, because awareness is always the beginning. And perhaps that is enough for tonight. No pressure to change, no need to act immediately. Just let these ideas rest with you, like quiet thoughts floating in the background as sleep slowly takes over. Because sometimes understanding begins not in effort, but in stillness. And in that stillness, power quietly waits.